So I just forgot to record this part in the lecture, so I'm just recording it offline. Now, this is about this keyword in JavaScript. Now, it might be very confusing because in Java, there is a keyword similar to this. Like there is a keyword called this, and it's used in similar situations. But the way it works in JavaScript is not exactly the same as in Java, so it causes some confusion. So just for the sake of contrast, I'm going to remind you of how it works in Java so that we can compare it to the other way or the different way that it is implemented or used in JavaScript. So in Java, this keyword is a variable that belongs to the object. Okay, so when you create an object, a part of it, a variable called this, that holds the reference to its own location. So let's say, for example, we have a class employee. So in Java, we would, in order to define an object, we would define a reference of that type, of the class type. And then, so this part is just a reference definition. And then this part is where the object is created. When you say new employee, and then maybe you can send it some initialization, but this part where the object is created. So after the new is called, the actual object is created in the memory, and its address would be stored in the reference. Okay, now this reference E is what we created, but there is another reference that we didn't create that is automatically created in us, that is internally part of the object that's called this. So when we define the class, we get to define some attributes like imp name, for example. Okay, so this attributes of a class would be part of the memory location where the object is. All right, now there is another variable that we don't have to define, that is defined automatically, that is called this. Okay, and it would have the value of the reference of the object. Okay, now when we define another object, so let's say E2, the same process. Now there is the same variable names, but they are in different locations, right? So here there's an imp name, and here there's an imp name. Or here there's a this, and here there's a this. The values inside the variables are different, right? So when we say e dot imp name, how does it know that we are referring to this variable that's called imp name, not this variable that's called imp name? It starts with the reference. So when we say e dot, so E have the reference to that object, so it goes and looks into that location and then looks for the variable name that is related to that, the variable name within this location. So when we see E dot imp name, it knows that this is the imp name under the reference stored in E. When we say E2 dot imp name, let's start with E2 has a pointer to that location, so we are talking about the imp name here. Now, when we write code inside the class and we want to refer to its internal members like attributes or methods, and we say this dot imp name. So the code is the same. The code that is related to this object would have this dot imp name. The code of that object would have also this dot imp name. How does it know the difference? Now, because this is a reference, so it starts with it, just like it started with a reference when we said e dot imp name, and it goes to that location and refers to the imp name within that location. Similarly, the same code line that says this dot imp name, if it's running within this object, it starts with the value stored in this, which is the reference of the object location, and then it knows that we are referring to imp name within this location. All right, so this is how it works in Java. In JavaScript, it's not the same. In JavaScript, this keyword belongs to the function. Okay, and it points to whichever object it was called on. Okay, so the function and the object are not exactly related. So we have a function object that has a variable called this, and whenever we try to call the function on an object, we can, like this, this keyword would refer to that object. So let's see. Just a point of distinction here. So that works with when we define the function with the function keyword. Okay, if we define the function with the arrow notation, it doesn't have a local variable called this. Okay, now let's see how would that look like. Now, when we define the method as part of the person, as part of the object, you know, like it is inside, the entire definition is inside the scope of the object. So it is, this is the only location, or only situation where it is similar to Java, because the method itself is defined within the scope of the object. So it is very similar. So when you say this, when you try to refer to this, because the function is part of the scope of the object, it's only accessible on that object. Okay, so when you say person dot say something, if we have a this inside, it would refer to that person. Okay, so now this, when we define it like this, it behaves like Java. But JavaScript is more flexible than that. So we can have a function definition that is independent of the objects, and we get the objects to refer to it. So we have something like this. Let's say something function is not part of the object. It's an independent object itself. And we have two different objects that want to refer to it. Okay, so in order to refer to it, we just have to include its name, but the definition itself is not part of the object. It's outside of the scope of the object. Okay, now we're not referring to the variable this here, so we wouldn't feel the difference, but let's add the variable this in the function definition. Now, say something is an independent function, it's not part of an object. Okay, but the object's referring to it. So what are we referring to when we say this? So when we call the function through the person object, this keyword would refer to that person object, and then the value of the name there is Alice. When we call the function through the anime character object, this would be pointing to that object, and its name is White Rabbit. Okay, now you see how that goes. A function is not part of the object. This keyword is a variable, a local variable in the function. Okay, and whenever we try to call a function with an object, it's this keyword will refer to it. Now it might be clearer if we've seen the if we've seen it in a different way. But before that, now if we call the function without any object, then it's this will refer to the global object. Okay, now let's see something here. There's another way to call a function, that is, or to cause the function to be executed, that is to use the method named call of the function object itself. Now remember when we said that in JavaScript everything is an object, and even the function is an object that has code that can be executed. Now here, and also if you remember, when we don't precede the name of or if we don't follow the name of the function with round parentheses, we're not calling it for execution, we're using that name as a reference. So now we are referring to the object that contains that function, and that object has a method called or named call, and that causes the function to be executed. The first argument in that function is the value that will be associated to this. So if we are defining the function, the parameter name is this. Okay. Now, when we call the function and send it we send an object at the first argument. This is the object that this keyword refers to. Okay. Similarly here. All right. So this is like this line when we say object dot and then the function name is equivalent to saying function dot call and then send that object as the first argument. Okay. Now let's say here. Now the function doesn't care which object you send or which object it is called through. Okay. It just tries to find a property. When we say this dot name, it tries to find a property that has the name that is referred to here. So accidentally it's the same, it's a name. Okay, so we're trying to find something called name inside the object. So the function doesn't check whether the object has this property or not. So when we call it through an object that has a property with the same name, it will, even if it's not relevant. So this is supposed to be a character saying something. So the logic of the function is not really relevant to the courses, but the function doesn't care whether it's relevant or not. It just looks for the property with the same, with the property referenced here. If we accidentally have a property that is called name, then it will be called. Okay. If we don't have a property called name, the function is not going to detect that. Now, if it does, and then that object doesn't have a property called name, so it will return undefined. Or the value of this operation, so this dot name, will be undefined. Okay. All right. Now, when we have an inner function, then and we define it with the function keyword, either with the declaration notation or with the functional expression. Whenever there's the keyword function exists, it has a local variable called this. And if we have a local variable of the same name, it will overshadow the variable outside. Okay, so now when we called the outer function through the object person, and that object has a property called name. So this line shouldn't be a problem, we refer to it. But we have an inner function that is called here. Now this function has its own local keyword or local this variable that overshadows the outer variable. So this inner variable, because this function is not called through an object, it's this reference will be pointing to the global object, and the global object in Node.js doesn't have a property called name, so it will return undefined. Okay, so it looks like it's the same line and it's within the same function, but because this is part of a local function, its local this variable will overshadow the outer variable. Okay, but if we are defining the inner function with the arrow notation, it doesn't have a local this variable, so this line would be exactly equivalent to this line. So the object referred to here is the exact same object referred to here, because the inner function doesn't have a local variable to overshadow the outer variable called this. All right. All right, so that's it. Next is the hands-on for that.